I just want to first and foremost say I think we're all fans of the most badass sport there is. I mean, what these riders and what they go through, I always tell people when I explain it, the perfect combination of man and machine. I think we're on the cusp right now of everything that happened with this whole light debacle. We always have flagger issues. We always have lapper issues that I think Honda really missed the mark of what they could have done. I personally think Honda, after last weekend, should have stuck their feet in the ground and demanded a move on transparency with communications and helmet comms. I think there's so much upside for teams, fans, riders, from a safety security standpoint. I guess, what is your guys' feeling on that stuff? I think riders could take revenue share from it. I think if they could tie it into the Insta360s and get riders to wear chest cams, I think there's a lot of stuff we can do with policing the sport that way from just on-track plus content. What do you guys feel about that stuff? And where do you guys see potential downside? I understand the only downside from a safety standpoint is, the comms on the outside of the helmet, as well as, cameras on the helmet as well.
You want to go first, Coach? Thanks, Briggs. I appreciate the
incredible questions.
Yes,
a lot of meat on the bone.
A lot of meat
on the bone. The first thing I'll jump on is the lights, and I'll just surmise it by saying I think we just need to start with consistency more than anything else. And I think we've seen just in the last week the inconsistencies. I was kind of hoping with Jeremy Albright going over there, I was hoping that they would get a little bit tighter on here's the absolute rules and we're going to stick to them. And we just haven't seen that. Obviously there's a lot of politics behind that. So I do agree with you, Briggs. I think a lot of that can be tidied up with having the communication systems. I think we're at a time and an age where you could make the communication system not work except from point A to point B on a straightaway. So that way you can't have somebody talking elsewhere, then have the ability that if everybody on the track needs to be aware of it. I don't think that technology is too far-fetched in today's day and age. So I think there needs to be consistency on what the rules are. I mean, we saw literally in this last week, they've yet made another edit to the rule book. The fact that Lars was saying that this new rule about having a lead up light, that most of the people in the paddock weren't even aware of it. I think that says about pretty much everything we need to say about the AMA and the communication. When you look at the profit sharing, revenue sharing, you look at the Netflix special associated with Formula One, and you look at how much money the manufacturers, I apologize, guys, I'm not a F1 aficionado, but whether it's Ferrari or McLaren or whoever, manufacturer-wise.
I'm going to answer the call right after, Coach, but I appreciate the call, man, and I'll continue to keep doing this probably every show, so thank you.
When we look at like the Manufacturers Cup, if you look at the idea that if McLaren, like they did last year with what's his name? Not Laredo. Somebody help me out. The gentleman who won Formula One last year.
Don't say it now. Damn it, Coach. I've just started watching the Drive to Survive.
I'm talking about last year. No, I'm talking about last year. The guy who won the championship.
No, but last year, that's what the whole series is about, is last year.
Yeah, but if you followed F1 last year,
I have not. I've been waiting just for the Netflix show. So
well, I'm gonna burst your bubble because
no.
Okay, but my point. Okay, so whoever wins, I won't say who it was, but whoever wins gets those manufacturer dollars. That's upwards of $150 million for that race team for winning the manufacturers. I'm going to call it the Manufacturers Cup. I know it's not the way what they call it. Somebody put it in the chat room so I don't look like an idiot.
Well, Briggs has got a good point with the revenue sharing, where they could just, if they had just a copy of the audio, they could put it into their socials on stuff to then monetize it as well. Is that where you're going with it or no?
Well, just in regards to what he was talking about, it's amazing that Formula One, if you look at their model, you look at the venues that they go to, people that, that the entities that build these are billion-dollar facilities, then they bring the race series there. We've talked about the idea that if you step back and you look at these stadiums and they're filled, and you look at the corporate sponsors at each venue, then you look at the idea that each team has their own media room and all. You just look at how well orchestrated it is. Look at the amount of money that series is generating, and then go back full circle. If you win the Manufacturers Cup, that could be upwards of $150 million for that team. and how important it is for the manufacturers to win. Because when Briggs brought up the fact that Honda should put their foot down, somebody's going to have to do it first. And I don't know what Moto Fever Media saying "shut up, coach" means and what number 3 means. Can you help me understand that, Johnny?
What? There's so many revenue streams that like I'm highlighting because he's the guy that had our question too. There's lots of different revenue streams that you could have as long as you're allowed to use them. Because there's
But
been
why are we not matching somebody who's already done it? Let's take Formula One, for example. Why are
I
we
think
not
that's what we're
emulating that
trying.
model?
When I talk to Feld and everything, they're trying to get in this stuff. There's just lots of logistics, and part of the deal is the privateers. Lack of a better word, our sport is built off of you could buy a bike and then instantly go race it. But it's getting less and less competitive to be able to do that because of just even the sheer lack of tires, right? And most of these guys are running these like here's a little tidbit that I will tell you about the unfiltered all access video that I'm posting later today. Jay Dungy told me that Tomac's foot pegs are 3D printed. They're 3D printed titanium to be super sharp, lightweight. That's not really stuff that a privateer has access to for stuff, but if you're just doing that simple thing, what else is on that motorcycle that is crazy? There's a lot of cool little tidbits in there that I want you guys to pay attention to and go to. But with what Jim said, as far as I think he's going to explain his revenue stream as well. Also, the comms, there needs to just be a GPS. The bikes usually know where they are. Talking with some of the mechanics, they said that the GPS doesn't work as well in stadiums because you're in a closed dome. And so you can't get like line of sight with the satellites. So sometimes GPS is difficult in that, but for outdoors and everything, it's not a problem. Or even an open stadium, it's not a problem, which I didn't think of. But then it also made me think of like, oh yeah, I'm bringing the Starlink in here and I can't fucking get the internet because I'm in a goddamn concrete building. And yeah, it makes perfect sense. It needs to see the satellite in the sky. But I'm digressing. It would be somewhat simple to be able to come up with a scenario where over the mechanics area, mic on with control, there's a red flag on the finish line, caution, off. But it's just in one particular area. So we're not messing with a rider that's jumping over a triple or something, or we just simply have communication with just one person. So if a mechanic needs to get to one rider, they can now calm the control center, and then the control center goes, Eli Tomac, you're black flagged, and then, pull off kind of a thing. So they are only hearing one thing. There's no other crazy, hey, there's a 3 seconds behind, you let them over. I think we start very small with the radio communication, but it needs to happen, right?
Help me understand, and if you don't know it, Johnny, maybe send me in the chat room. How does F1 do it? Because when you're watching the screen, they're all looking at their screen, and you hear them talking to the rider or the driver, excuse me, and they do a great job of, you can hear what the driver's saying back to the team and the team. And then doesn't Formula One and their officials have the ability to kind of like essentially just sit on top of everyone's communications, and they can pipe into anyone and all teams at any given time? So you and I are a team and we're talking to the rider driver, and then the governing body, or in this case, F1, is able to talk to everybody and all the teams if it's a safety issue. How does that work? Do you know? I don't know if you're familiar with it. I'm not.
Very rudimentary on stuff, but I believe on their steering wheels, they've got like a communication where they can talk, they can turn off communication if they don't want to hear anything more, if they want to ignore people. But I think the headquarters or the race director can get in touch with them at all times saying, hey, you need to go into the pits, you're fined and whatnot. But then they have also communication with their team manager or whatever who's in control of radio communication saying, hey, let your teammate by, block this guy, do that kind of stuff. And it makes for great drama, great TV, which would be awesome for the sport.
Well, and I think this ties in with what Jim was saying as well, because another thing, and maybe I'm just being a little bit a geek here, but I'm always amazed when they tap into the communication, and you can hear those drivers as comfortable as we are talking right now on this live podcast. You don't hear the background noise of the motor. You don't hear the wind. You don't hear or see anything, and vice versa. The communication now, again, I don't know if it's the exact audio that the driver's hearing and what the team's hearing, but it sure is crystal clear. And I just don't know why we don't duplicate that model.
Pit boards are, it's a fax machine is what it is. It's not something you send for urgent messages, because no rider looks at fucking pit boards when they're doing, like, they want to talk about being distracted. What's being distracted is you're hauling ass and you're trying to pay attention to something over here, rather than if you just have a quick 3-second communication of, have the safety meeting with the riders at the riders meeting every morning and say, hey, you as a rider, you need to know what section is what. We're going to call the first triple rhythm section 1, and then like divide it into 3 or 4 sections. So then radio communication could be like, hey, we have a caution in section 1. And so then the rider's like, okay, that's that triple section. They can do it because there's plenty of time to think, because a lot of time they're in the air, and that's when riders take break and get ready for stuff. It's difficult when you're in the heat of battle with somebody because you're focusing, and that's where I think we need to just have one set, which is like across the start, wherever the pit boards are, where communication is turned on and turned off, and eventually work through it that way.
I just don't think it needs to be complicated. I think
no. Again, Steve Jobs,
to your point,
simplicity is the key to success.
Because I think the key here is, if like wherever we have the mechanics area, let the communication, because that's obviously they've chosen that part of the track where they feel it's the safest for the riders to be able to look over at the board. Do away with the board. That's the straightaway that there's going to be communication nowhere else, and then allow for
the comments on the space. Like I will delete any comments that are about Anderson's private life. Just straight up right now, I'm not having any of that on my channel. I wouldn't want my dirty laundry being aired. We're not having it. It's just respect. It's the same thing that when I go to the races, I don't fucking swarm and film a down rider, because I know I wouldn't want to be sit there in a scene of, just not your best. I'm not going to do it. So we're not going to have that. That's something I'm going to stand by. You can call it politically correct or whatever, but that's just my values, and that's what we're going with here at this